So I mentioned before on my other channel, and anybody who's followed me from is on here that followed me from my other channels knows how it was 2018. I started. I always feel funny bringing this up, but it was too strange, and I was saying stuff to people. But I started seeing 11:11. Okay, it started in 2018, probably like the fall or winter, somewhere around there. Okay, I would say, and then, but I was seeing it 3-4 times a day too, sometimes two, but usually almost always three, many times four. Whether it's an address sign, it just, you can't, and a lot of times looking at your phone, but so this went on, and like at the 6-month point of it, I'm just like, this is weird. It's just weird. I thought, is this a neurological thing? It was just weird. Because you can't really plan that. I mean, I guess you could if you use an alarm clock or something, but it just, and it wasn't just random. It was random, but every day, and it went on every day, 2 or 3, 4, usually 3 times, 4 times a day, until the fall of 2020. And then that's when I started speaking up on social media. That's when a lot of things fell into place for me. Was in, I would say, spring, summer of 2020. I mean, things before that were falling into place, like in 2019. But I didn't have a lot of it tied together yet. Then when COVID hit, and I saw the way the hospitals were being, and then the BLM stuff that was all coordinated with the medical and hospital, so them all coming out that was the new public health crisis, racism, and I was just like, no, this is so coordinated. But a lot of it, I would say, by the summer of 2020, and most of it I had pieced together. And once I started making videos, it stopped. I mean, every now and then it still happens. But it was without fail 3-4 times a day from 2018, every day until the fall of 2020. So I was checking in the Bible, and I know I've seen other people on here that have had this experience, so I don't know what the phenomenon is, but for me, it wasn't just seeing it once. And I was looking it up, I was telling people, I'm like, this is weird. So, and it was every day without fail. It was like, it's like if you thought something was trying to get your attention, you're like, okay. And I've said before that God got me sober, so some 30 years ago. So I'm just like, okay, God, what's going on here? Is this you? Because it was without fail every day. So I looked in the Bible at some verses that are 11:11, and this is what I found. Proverbs 11:11. By the blessing of the upright a city is exalted, but by the mouth of the wicked it is overthrown. Romans 11:11. So I ask, did they stumble in order that they might fall? By no means. Rather, through their trespass, salvation has come to the Gentiles, so as to make Israel jealous. The Gentiles, we would be considered the Gentiles. Deuteronomy 11:11. But the land that you are going over to possess is a land of hills and valleys, which drinks water by the rain from heaven. Numbers 11:11. Moses said to the Lord, why have you dealt ill with your servant, and why have I not found favor in your sight that you lay the burden of all this people on me? John 11:11. After saying these things, he said to them, our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him. And obviously, many times in the Bible, when it talks about somebody being asleep, they don't mean asleep as in how we think it is. This was talking about raising Lazarus from the dead. Isaiah 11:11. In that day the Lord will extend his hand yet a second time to recover the remnant that remains of his people from Assyria, from Egypt, from Pathros, from Cush, from Elam, from Shinar, from Hamath, and from the coastlands of the sea. Jeremiah 11:11. Therefore thus says the Lord, behold, I am bringing disaster upon them that they cannot escape. Though they cry to me, I will not listen to them. And Revelations. But after 3.5 days, a breath of life from God entered them, and they stood up on their feet, and a great fear fell on those who saw them. It's regarding the two witnesses, obviously, that I think it is, right? That they were killed, but then God raises them. So, little interesting considering the times we're in, and they're all 11:11 verses from different parts of the Bible. But there's been different, there's been different things that I've come across since then that a lot of people have had this phenomenon happen to them in the last several years, or maybe even throughout their life. But this was something that, like I said, this wasn't just one day in 2000. This was every day. 3, 4, it was rarely 2, it was almost always 3 and sometimes 4. Every day without fail. And it stopped in the fall of 2020. In fact, I knew it was going to stop. There was a part of me that knew it was going to stop because it was like when everything clicked and I knew that I had to speak up. Because the summer of 2020 was when I had been spending so many days a week emailing over and over again, DOJ, FBI, who was the head of DOJ then? What was that guy's name? I forget. It's on the tip of my tongue. But contacting media, sending them the pictures of the blacklisted cameras, thermal cameras that Northwestern had put in, because I had taken pictures of them, had the serial number. They went back to one of the companies Trump blacklisted. I mean, I spent all that summer, so many days a week, doing that over and over again to every media person I could, email it to. And I guess that was probably the last part that fell in line for me, was I realized, wait a minute, the DOJ doesn't care about America. The FBI doesn't care about America. These people that are supposedly protecting America don't care about America, because they would have got back to me. That would have been a concern if the very president, he's the commander-in-chief, is telling you these 7 companies are blacklisted, okay? And maybe there was some way around it, but it was too designed. I mean, Northwestern had them all ready to go. It was like they knew it was coming. The minute lockdowns were announced, it was like they were putting them in, the thermal cameras. And that's the only hospital that I've gone to that's had thermal cameras. They closed off every entrance, and everybody had to be herded in, so you'd walk past these cameras. And the danger with those cameras, the reason Trump blacklisted those 7 companies was because of, well, one, human rights abuses against the Uyghurs. They're a small Muslim population in China, and they use those type cameras because they're under, all of China's under surveillance, but they really, use them. So it was human rights abuses against them because it's horrible. I'm not going to get into all of it, but and it's because of the facial recognition technology it has. It's like an invasion, a total violation, because of what those cameras can find out about you just through facial recognition. Yeah, our technology. So when I figured out that none of these agencies cared about America, that was when I was like, oh. And then I realized, that no matter how many people I emailed, even though the White House, they did actually leave me a voicemail. They were the only people that contacted me back, somebody from Trump's administration. But that was when I realized, no, I was the one that had to speak up about all of it. And that's when the 11/11 stopped, when I started speaking up.